Okay, time to do some mini tubs. For those of you that don't know, basically this is going to replace the inner half of the fender well, and it's going to move the inside wall in about 2 inches, and this allows you to get more tire under there. So what I'm talking about is this seam right here is going to be cut, and that whole fender well is going to be removed, and everything's moved that way. Right now, just as a point of reference for those interested, the car had 275 6015s, which are very last century stance wise, and you can see that that was the most tire you could get in there, because right here on this little hump, somebody's hit that with a hammer, and it still has kind of been rubbing the tire. And if you look on this side up in here, you can see the outside edge of the tire was hitting as well. So the offset was pretty good. It was the stock wheel and 275 6015, and I would say it would not fit, because if I ever tried to go around a turn too aggressively, you would hear it rub. So that is too much. But what is going back here are 315s, so hence the mini tubs. I'm not going to try to do a comprehensive video on how to do mini tubs, because Detroit Speed has a really good one with some awesome music, and I'll link it in the description. Sometimes I just have it on in the background for the music, really. But just a quick kind of overview. I'm going to come in and have to cut this corner out of the back of the seat pan, and then cut this whole tub out in one piece. I'll do that on both sides, and so I'll check back in after everything's sliced and diced. As Colin Chapman said, add lightness. And I think that's what I've done, because there was about 5 pounds of undercoating or some tarry type crap on the inside of that fender well, but there's no going back now because there's a giant hole in the car. So hopefully I did it right. This is just a rough cut, by the way, so this just kind of gets that piece out of the way. So there's some profile lines about 2 inches inside of this remaining piece of the wheel well, and it'll get cut from the inside, and this piece will come out. But just wanted to check in. In the video, the DSC shows, they show a very happy tech, kind of just easily cutting through all this, you know, no problems whatsoever. But I will tell you, the trunk on a Camaro is not very good for mobsters, because you can only fit 3/4 of a person in there. I was doing some interesting yoga poses to get to all these different cuts. There was like a tree pose. I did a downward dog at some point. At one point, I was doing a crow pose and had the body saw in my teeth. But we made it happen. So, onward and upward. All right, everything's cut free. So I'm just gonna yank on this, and it falls out. Another 5 pounds gone. And there's a quick look at what it looks like. And I've got the mini tub in place in the car. I've also gone through with a chisel and chiseled out all the rest of that tar crap on the part of the wheel well that's going to remain in there. That was a lot of work. But just in case you were wondering, no, it didn't just pop in there very easily. And in fact, if again you go back and watch the DSE video, they conveniently cut the scene right before the guy has to wrestle with the mini tub to shove it in place. So a tip for you, what I did was I kind of hooked it in place in the front up there, and then I kind of worked the lip around all the way around, and then I was able to get kind of a little bit of a pry bar in there and just pry it so that it slipped up in there. The trick is that they've got these little bead rolls, and these sit inside the floor, and you kind of have to shove it to get the bead rolls past the cut points. Once they get past there, you got a little room to maneuver. So it's just some swearing and some trimming and marking where the floor is keeping it proud, and then going back. And obviously you don't want to cut too much, because then you'd have a gap. But this went in after a good deal of struggle. Hopefully their side will go faster. So yeah. The next step in installing the mini tubs is adding these flanges. So DSC provides these nice laser cut flanges or whatever. They're too wide, but they're knowingly too wide, because what you do is you draw a line that's 1/4 inch inside of the edge of where your tub is going to run, and then you hold it up there, and you align it, and you kind of mark along the back edge, and then you trim it to fit so that the edge of this flange is flush with the floor level all the way around. And so I've done that, and I've hit it with some weld through primer, and now I've tacked it into place. So there's another flange that'll come right down here and hit these profiles. And so these flanges need to be bent. They come flat, but you kind of are on your own to bend them into place. So next step is to make the next flange, bend it into place, trim it to fit, and then we'll put the tub back in there, see if it's all good. If it is, we'll weld the rest of it in. All right, here the flanges all welded in. They look pretty ugly because the weld through primer is all burnt up, but you can see this flange, you had 1, 2, 3, and maybe a half bend, so that took me a little while of fidgeting to get it in there. And it goes up and around. I've seam welded it along this side, and I've kind of stitch welded it on the back. And then right here they had two slots in this one right here, and I suppose what they originally intended was for you to weld through that, because if you remember there was there's kind of a double floor here. There's a top one and a bottom one. But when you put it in according to their lineup, you don't get it lined up so that you can really weld through, so you just end up basically gap filling that hole. Not really useful, but anyway, so I'm now going to come through with a flap wheel and flatten all this stuff out so the tub sits flat, then drill some holes in the tub so I can do some rosette welds, and hopefully it all goes together. Alright, I've got the mini tub fit in place, and I've got pretty good gaps. You can kind of see up the edge there, especially right here. We got this little double bend right there. Looks pretty good, and I'll take you out here and show you why it looks good. It looks good because I'm using a whole heck of a lot of clamps. So it wasn't perfect. In fact, the fit up was actually pretty good, except for right here where I needed to do this kind of bend. So knowing next time, I will cut it a little less than I did on this side. But even still, with a decent gap there, I was able to get some clamps on it and squeeze it down, so it should be close enough to be able to weld on it. So yeah, I thought I might have to struggle with this and do some panel beating or something like that, but it actually turned out all right. So I've got some clamps going all the way around. I'll tack it in a couple places, and then I'm using some sheet metal screws on the inside flange to kind of hold that flange in place. And then that'll be it. I'll just weld through it. Here's what I meant by using self-tapping screws. So right here you can't really get a clamp to press this flange flush against the existing wall. So I've drilled little holes every so often and used a self-tapping screw to squeeze it together. So I've still got a screw in here, squeezed it flush, used a couple of the rosette welds on either side. I've done that down here as well. And then as you can see here, and I've already taken the screw out, and then here as well. And so I can work my way around, and that works pretty well. It doesn't have as much clamping force as a real clamp, but it does work in a pinch. Wimpy, wimpy, wimpy. Hefty, hefty, hefty. So as you can see, the driver's side mini tub is welded in, never to come out again, because there is a lot of welding on there. All welded around. It's got a little seam weld in the corner, so she's in there. On the other side, for comparison, is the original one. I'm not going to drag you guys through watching me replace the other one on the other side, but just for a comparison, you can see the difference with the extra 2 inches. One thing I didn't note earlier, but should have, when I took out this little panel here, you can't see it particularly well, there you go, but you can see I've got nice holes drilled where the spot welds were, and that came off nice and clean. That was the second side that I did. What I did over here was I screwed up, and basically what I did is I tried to get smart, and I used a smaller drill bit than I should have. But instead of getting all the spot weld, it ended up meaning when I got back there with my panel knife, I just ripped the crap out of it because it was still welded. So, lesson learned, don't try to save yourself half a second of extra welding time by going with a smaller bit than you should. Just drill that sucker out, and it's going to save you a lot of pain later. So I'll have to repair this or make the fill panel a little bit bigger just to take care of that. So again, making the right decision up front. Lesson learned again, or maybe not learned. All right, just to put an end on this video, here is the 315, 35, 18, I think it's what it is. I know it's 315 wide. Sitting in position, seems to fit, not a whole lot of clearance. Not sure if I could get 335s in there, though some people claim to have squeezed 335s up in there with mini tubs, but it would be pretty tight. So yeah, there you go. I'll take you outside and around to the back, Blair Witch style. All right. Yeah, that's meaty right there. Looking forward to that. Just got to do that all over again and the mini tubs will be done.